Hello, everybody. This is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you happen to be watching on a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. Well, I am glad to be here this evening with Cammie and April. Good to see you ladies this evening. Hope you are both doing well.
Thank you.
And we were hoping to get the entire group today because we have a really great episode of Must Be Read today for a very specific comic book that came out last year. And if you haven't seen our Best of 2022, this actually ended up on two of the That's Comical people's top 3 of the year. Unfortunately, Shay is dealing with some family matters this evening, and Andy, fortunately, is not here because he and his wife on Easter Sunday had their baby boy. So we are so excited to know that the family over there is doing well. And as someone who is now approaching his daughter's first birthday, I can definitely understand what he is dealing with at the moment. So there is no reason for him to come running to do this discussion with us, though I know for a solid fact he's really upset that he is missing this. And it's only because of the fact that we are going to be discussing the comic book miniseries Twig by Skottie Young and artist Kyle Strahm from Image Comics. This is a very interesting book for me personally, but I guess I could say comedically that I think we can all know exactly how, outside of me, how everybody else read this comic. And it's pretty much because I basically told everybody to read this comic. And I was really, really glad that nobody had any hesitations, especially Cammie, because these days I just reach out to Cammie and say, Cammie, look, a new comic book. And she goes running for it because she knows I never steer her in the wrong direction. But I guess I'm right about that. I pretty much told everybody in the That's Comical team to pick up this book.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, as soon as I saw the cover, I was like in. I just, there was something about that character that I had to know more. So, but that's usually the case in anything that you recommend, Steve. So yeah, I ran.
And that's what's really funny, because this specific book, actually, I almost didn't even read it at all. This was a comic book that I saw the previews for, and I saw the characters, and I was just saying to myself, this looks very interesting, but I don't know if I want to get this or not. So I didn't put it on my pull list for that month when the first issue was coming out, because I didn't really know too much about it. And one of the reasons why is a topic that we'll discuss in this video when we analyze the book, but it wasn't until the week of its release when some of the big names in the comic book community were actually talking about it and saying, this is a book that you are going to have so much fun with, especially if you are someone that likes things like Fraggle Rock and Dark Crystal and all that great classic 80s Jim Henson stuff. So the minute they were saying that, I was like, you know something? I'm going to go to my local store, and if there is a copy on the shelf, I'm going to pick it up. I picked up the last copy on the shelf, and I'm so glad that I did, because I did not regret what I read when I read that first issue. And of course, for me personally, the rest is history. So Skottie Young is someone that I personally know more for his artwork, and I believe April does have a couple of reads herself with some of Skottie Young's work, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yes. But off the top of my head, I can't pick them out because the artwork seemed very familiar.
Yeah, he does a lot of variant covers for various popular comics because some of his artwork is very like reminiscent of Calvin and Hobbes, which is a comic strip that I personally adore. The thing that I want to really discuss in regards to Twig is this book is as simple as it can be. And it is a very basic hero's journey with all of the typical cliches that you will find in said hero's journey. But what is it about this book that still makes it a lovable and memorable read? Whoever wants to take that, please do begin.
We're all gonna fight for it. So I think I think for me, it is that classic journey trope. You have a lot of those classic things that you see of that coming of age story. But what I find most endearing about Twig's journey is the fact that while he has this like huge journey for himself, he's not technically the main hero of the story. It's like we're getting this like little side quest and we get to see how things led up for a totally different hero. And I like that, especially since in this book, you get all these like little tiny details that you could just like sit and stare at these illustrations for a while. And so in the simplicity of the storytelling, there is this great big world that's being explored that, well, yeah, we have this little guy who does his little journey and he moves on. And then at the end of it, he has a whole world to explore. And it's nice. I liked it. It was cute.
For me, again, it was the artwork that drew me in, but the story is so wholesome. And I think that's what kept me reading. You don't get a lot of really feel good comic books that just make you want to turn the pages. And this made me do that for so many different reasons. I wanted to know about his journey. I wanted to know where he was going to end up. I wanted to know if he was going to be successful. I also fell in love with every single one of the characters that I was introduced to, and that doesn't happen very often. Let me just say, I need a splat in my life because everybody needs a splat. He is the best thing of this story. I find him to be so endearing. He looks like a dinosaur, but he's not. But you know, whatever. He's probably some kind of amoeba or something. I find him so endearing, and he's such a smartass, but in such the best way because he balances Twig so well. But again, just every character you encounter, whether it's for just a page or if you revisit that character down the road, you love them and you continue to root for these characters and you want them to be successful. In addition to that, it's happy because the color palette really just draws you in. I cannot say enough about issue 5. Issue 5 was just, it was very few words and a lot of, just taking you image by image to get you to the final scene. But you still love an image just as much as you love the words on the page. And even when you get words on the page, there's not a lot of context there. A lot of it is just very quick and to the point. You get your jokes, and these sorts of things. But I guess that's why I was so enamored with it, is the fact that you don't get a lot, but it allows your imagination to do so much.
Yeah, I agree, because I think what makes this story so, I love the word that you used, endearing. That is such a great word to describe Twig and this whole story, because for me, it's one of those simple yet complex kind of deals when you're reading it, because there's just so much to take in visually, even though there is very simple dialogue. But I love the fact that the dialogue is so simple. And I mean, I just love the way the story starts, because here is this little blue creature. And let me just say, Twig deserves everything from a cartoon series to a plushie line because of how wonderful these characters are. Even the villains are fun. I loved the Trapper. He was you could definitely see how much of a menace that he can be and how much fear he stoked in Twig, but he's still a character that had some kind of a lighthearted wit. Like, he felt like a Looney Tunes villain to me. But it's like, the story begins, Twig has a new job, and he's late for work. I mean, that's just fantastic. It's such a great way to start a great story like this. And then, of course, what just immediately made me say, okay, I know I'm going to love this story, is when he goes to the mountain. and he's talking to the mountain, and then the tongue comes out and it forms a bridge. All that went through my mind was the trash heap knows all and sees all. That's all that I thought of when I saw that image. And once I saw that, I just said to myself, this is going to be so wonderful. And it really is. And I just, once again, it's about a guy who has to do something, like you said, April. It's interesting because if you really think about it, he's not really the main character. His job is to bring an important item to an actual person who's on a quest. He's literally an NPC character, which is really clever when you really get to the end and you see everything. But like you said, Cammie, even though that's all Twig is, this simple creature, you still want to explore this world, and you still want to explore it with Twig and Splat as your guides.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned the mountain because, well, I have that open right here, so that'll give everybody kind of a visual of what we're talking about. But every time I opened a page to a different character like that, isn't it strange how much nostalgia you connected with? Because, like, right there for me, that was never-ending story, and the whole journey, I'm thinking Wizard of Oz, and then it was like, but Wizard of Oz meets Labyrinth, and then Labyrinth is in the world of Alice in Wonderland, and the whole time I'm like, man, if this was narrated by Neil Gaiman, that would just be the bee's knees, because everything about this just has all of the feels. You can tell he has so much pop culture influence, but yet this is so unique. I don't want to, misguide any new readers who have not read this yet by thinking, oh, well, if I've seen all of that, then I don't need to read this, because that's not the case. It's just, as the reader, your imagination goes into overdrive, and it is so magical. And I think as an adult, something like this is so precious because it's so rare that you connect with the story on so many levels like that, but yet it brings out not only all the feels, but it makes you laugh, it makes you cry, it makes you, have all of this emotion as you're being introduced to this magical world, or worlds, I guess, because we do come across a multi-platform universe, but it's just so incredible how my imagination was just overdrive, when it came to pop culture references. And I just thought, man, I am such a lucky adult that I had such a killer childhood that I got to experience all of that, and now I get something cool like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's almost something like nostalgic of almost going back to picture books with the story.
Yeah.
So when you were like little and you had someone reading you a story, but you were just so trapped in those pictures that even though you had the story going on, you would see things in the picture and you were creating your own story. And these characters were becoming like your best friend that you would later play with, have a tea party, or chase around the backyard. It had a lot of that kind of feel in it just because of how expressive a lot of these illustrations were.
Yeah, and I think what's also very interesting is that, I personally love when you see a person in the world of comics, especially if they are well known more for one thing that they do, and then they give you something on the complete opposite end. And this is where you get to see, like, do they do this side of comic books just as well as they do the other side? Like, some perfect examples for me is like May's book. We all know that Jeff Lemire is an excellent writer, but there aren't that many opportunities for us to see him not just write a story, but also create the story with his art. The same could be said about some other writers and artists. Like right now, one of the hottest miniseries in DC Comics is Batman and the Joker, the Deadly Duo, and it's written and drawn by one of the greatest artists in modern comics, and that's Mark Silvestri. Mark Silvestri has been known since the 80s, since he started with the world of X-Men, and then moved on to Image Comics to create characters in the world like Cyberforce and Witchblade. And now to come back to DC and not only draw a Batman comic, but also write an incredibly good Batman story, that makes me excited. So Skottie Young's a great artist. I love how he really makes a lot of comic strip-like art. But knowing that he's writing this one makes me completely not even realize that he is also writing one of the most popular Marvel comics right now in Strange Academy. People are saying that that is an incredibly fun and entertaining book. And he also writes a book right now called I Hate Fairyland. That's another big thing that he does. But I've mostly knew him for his art. So knowing that he was writing this book, I'm actually kind of glad that he only wrote the book, because I just don't think that the artwork would have been the same as Kyle Strahm. Because what I really like about Kyle Strahm's artwork is, like you both said, there's a feel of something familiar and nostalgic along with a story that's fresh and new. And I feel, based on all the references that you made, Cammie, I think that that's what makes Kyle Strahm's art so powerful in Twig, because he brings you something fresh, but also brings the nostalgia. And what I also love about these books is that they're partially silent issues too. They want the pictures to tell you the story, going back to the picture book element that you mentioned, April. So again, this is why I am shocked that this book did not get as much traction as I thought it would, because the people who did read it outside of this little circle here had nothing but great things to say about it.
I think people get a little bit apprehensive to pick up something that looks very childish, which is unfortunate, because you lose a lot of opportunity to find something spectacular when you prejudge something. You know, you hear it all the time. It's an age-old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. But in this case, look at the artwork, fall into it. You know, even if you are apprehensive about purchasing the whole series, buy a copy. I think that anyone who reads issue 1 is going to want to finish the series, because you want to find out, how does this journey end? What are all of the things that they're going to encounter? I mean, just the way issue 1 ends, you're like, oh shit, this is like the worst thing possible that can happen, but then it's not, and it just really gets you excited to want to go into issue 2. I flew through this. Luckily, I had all the issues in hand, and I just completely absorbed this in one sitting, because I couldn't get enough. And I was very excited that at the end of issue 5, it said that Twig will be back. I'm hoping we get some more. And you know what? I'm not mad about it, because I think that you can do so much with this storyline, and you're not going to get bored. I think there's so many different avenues to explore, obviously so many different worlds to explore. So I'm very excited for hopefully what the future of Twig could possibly hold.
Especially now that he's got his little posse.
Yeah, and that's what's also very interesting that I love so much about the story. Sometimes, the artwork, when it comes to the characters, it's like, we mentioned Splat. Splat is pretty much a little yellow banana slug or something like that. But is it just me, or did he I don't know why, but he reminded me of like Rizzo the Rat or Boober from Fraggle Rock. Like this witty character that is not afraid to say what's on his mind. It's like the buddy comedy element between Splat and Twig in this story is priceless, because you get so many chuckles and smiles even when the chips are down. Like, I just loved that scene where Twig had given up, and Splat said, well, if you're not going to do it, someone's got to get this where it's got to go. And even though he can't even lift the bag, he's still trying everything he can. Like, yes, that's exactly where you want the story to go. You want Twig to get to the end, because I also think what's really cute about him is that he's not perfect. He's extremely faulty. Like, I love how even at the end of the first issue, he just keeps making mistakes completely by accident. Like, I broke the thing, like, it's just really cute. It's adorable.
I didn't even look at him as a snail until you said that. To me, the whole time, I just looked at him as a big yellow dinosaur, or a little yellow dinosaur.
He's a slug.
Like a brontosaurus. But yeah, you're absolutely right, because I didn't pay attention to the little tentacles that he has. So yeah, he is a slug. But he's so cute. I love him, and he's a smart ass, and I love that about him. And I connected with him on so many different levels, but he really did carry the story so much further than I think it could have possibly gone if he wasn't there. And he's he's the right mix of salty and sassy and sweet that you just, and it's funny because Twig cooks, you know, so he's a spice for the cook. But it's fun. He's adorable, and I love the story so much. I could just talk about it forever.
Yeah, definitely the horned beast as well. That's a wonderful character. I love the panels where they ask him what his name is, and he's like, "What's a name?" Like, this is such beautiful writing. Like, it's so like you don't expect that conversation, but as you're reading it, you're like, this just works in so many ways.
I'm glad you mentioned the horned beast, because too, that's when I'm saying you go through all the fields. I was like, oh no, please don't, no, please don't. I love him, please don't.
Yeah, I
And
love
then
the
he does
whole.
it, and then you're like, okay.
Yeah, and like the whole thing about taking his heart, and it's like it doesn't necessarily mean that. It has a double meaning. Like there's some really deep thoughts in there as well. Like even for such a simple story, I love how there are those moments that are very emotional and very thought-provoking. It's like it's things that we think about. It's things that we don't even think about in our own lives every single day. And yet some of these things that we see, you put them into those interesting perspectives. It's like, wow, that's absolutely wonderful to see.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a multi-generational read. You could have young kids pick this up and really enjoy the adventure, and then you can have like adults pick it up and they're queuing in on some of those little details. They're like, yeah, it's like watching some of the Pixar Disney movies.
Yes. Yes, it definitely feels like one of those older movies, like or maybe one of the newer ones, because like I have a soft spot for The Good Dinosaur. I don't know why, but I do. But it reminds me of the atmosphere of the story. Very much reminds me of Twig as well. And I agree with you, Cammie. You know, I also was. Did anybody else like start feeling a little sad when you got to the end of issue 4, not knowing what the last page of issue 5 was going to say? Because this is one of the few things that gets me about mini and maxi series. Like not all of them, but some of them. Like you got to be a really good story. It's like when you get to that penultimate issue and you've been loving it for such a long period of time, you just don't want it to end. You know, like did anybody else feel that exact same way when we got to the end of issue 4?
Yeah, when you opened up issue 5, you were like, oh, please be longer than I want you to be. You know, you're kind of hoping for a double issue or something. But yeah, you don't, when something is that good, you don't want it to end. But on the same accord, you kind of do, because you know, you can't have too much of a good thing, and you also have to be able to savor the beautiful pieces that you collect along the way. And there's just, you know, April said it so perfectly, where you find yourself kind of just stopping as you're reading this and just enjoying the pictures and pulling things from the pictures and letting your imagination run wild with those things, because you can really just set the scene for so many different you know, issues of this series, where you're kind of imagining other conversations or what's happening, you know, when Twig is asleep, you know, all of these little things. So, you know, yeah,
Yeah,
you get sad, but then you're also excited to see the outcome.
and you're right. I agree with you on another thing that you just mentioned. This is also one of those stories where you really want to know what's going on between the panels. Like, you know, there's so much more to this story and you want more. But at the same time, you know, you're right. You don't want too much of a good thing. It's like, as much as I wanted another issue of Jurassic League, you know, I'm glad that we just got those 6 issues because they were just perfect and they gave me the story that I wanted. But Twig was a different thing. And it's just because of the fact that this was unlike any story in comics that I have read. And I love that you said that, April, because yes, this is also one of those stories that you can literally sit like a young child down and read it with them, because there's nothing adult in this book. The images would look a little frightening, but then again, take a look at Dr. Seuss books. Take a look at Where the Wild Things Are. There are some, and that's another reason why it's like nothing is ever quite as it seems in this story from time to time. Like I said, even the Trapper, he looks very menacing, and he is a real villain, but he does have some of those moments where you will laugh because he just says something really stupid or something really funny. So it's hard not to truly fear an obstacle, because I don't necessarily consider him there is no main antagonist. I think if you're going to give anything in this story the label of antagonist, I think it's time, because Twig just has to get his job done, But you get to issue 5, and then you see how it ends, and then you do see at the very end Twig will return, and I feel that this is one of the exceptions, just because I feel that Skottie Young has so many more stories to give us with this character. I of course would hate to see it be driven into the ground until the point where it's just unreadable, but I don't know. I just, especially if somebody loves the world that they've created, they're not going to steer it in the wrong direction. I mean, that's why I keep saying, and I've said this so many times on this channel, that's why I think Jeff Lemire is one of the best writers in comic books right now, because when he gets to the end of his story, he sticks the landing. He lets you know the story is over. I mean, the fact that we're heading to the last issue of Little Monsters next month, 13 issues, we know that when that story is done, it's done. But I just feel that Twig is not done. I feel that there is more. And it's just a matter of Skottie Young taking these characters that he's given us and hopefully getting Kyle Strahm back to do the artwork, because I feel that if you get any other artist on this book, it is just not going to be the same. It's not. So who knows? Maybe it will never come. And if it never comes, I still love all 5 issues. And rereading it again, it's still a joy, an absolute joy. I can read this comic 50 bazillion times, I think, and never get sick of it, because it's just that good.
I think this is one of those stories that if you read it over and over again, you're going to discover something new. You're going to see something you may have not seen before, or you might, pay more attention to one character than another. And that is always fun when you have a multifaceted array of characters, and they're all so very unique. You can go back and you can just reread it and focus on that particular character. So this is just one of those stories that is definitely rereadable, which makes the investment worth your while. And I think that, like you said, Steve, if they do not choose to revisit this world, that's okay, because it does end very well. It allows your imagination to kind of do its own work. But I would really like to see what the chosen is. Who is this chosen? It gave me Kingdom Hearts vibes, like sick. So I'm like, oh, what are you? What adventure are you going to take us on? And I would just like to see if the chosen is going to kind of just go off and do their own thing, or if this is a combination of a new person in Twig's little posse or what have you. But it's magical, and it's an experience that I think everyone will take something different from, but I think overall everyone will enjoy it. I don't think there's anybody that could possibly read this and be like, oh, that was just absolutely horrific, because there's something in it for everyone. Multi-generational was a very well put thought, April, because I do feel that no matter your age, no matter your reading level, no matter your interest in comics or graphic novels, this is one of those stories that is just perfect for everybody.
I agree. Well, as far as I'm concerned, this is definitely a must-be-read. I really feel that anybody will gain something from it. And, I mean, I don't know if I would ever meet Skottie Young, but if I ever got the opportunity to meet him, this is the only thing that I will immediately come to him and say, I think this may be the best work you've ever done, because I've never, as someone who has read the superhero stuff and is starting to venture into different areas that comics have to offer today, Twig is unlike anything I've ever read. And I just love how unique it is. And it's because of the fact that it's just that standalone story. I think that's a mixture of the reasons as to why I want more, and also the reason as to why it's connected with me in such a way, because there are comics that I will rave about, but as far as I'm concerned, as someone who's read comics as long as I have, I don't think I have like praised a comic book quite like Twig ever before this. I really cannot think about another comic that I've talked about the way I have for Twig.
Yeah, this is something I would definitely share with other people, regardless of their reading interest, because I really think, if you're into whatever, you can still find enjoyment in a story like this. But if I was ever to meet Skottie Young, I would be like, how do you have such a beautiful imagination for Twig and then write something as crazy as The Me You Love in the Dark? Hello, like, where is your brain all the time? So, anyways. But no, this was fantastic, and this is a definite must be read from my corner of the world.
Yep, I would agree. This is also a really great gateway kind of read for people who are kind of like, I'm not sure comics, graphic novels are where I want to be at. And this is also a great thing that I would just sit down and read with my godchildren, because hello, it's weird, it's off the wall, it's not something you would find anyplace else. And I want to introduce them to that world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what kind of person my daughter is going to be, but I know that I will do everything that I can to let her know what daddy thinks is cool. And if there's one thing that I know that I am going to introduce her to at a very young age, because she's already ventured into Jim Henson's world thanks to Sesame Street, but she'll learn about the Muppets and she'll learn about Fraggle Rock. And when she gets older, she'll learn about the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and Mirror Mask. And I'm just going to say, sweetie, you know that daddy reads a lot of comics. If you like all that stuff, why don't you read this with dad? Let's read this book together. I have a feeling that she is going to know what Twig is all about before she reads a Harry Potter book. That'll be very powerful.
Yeah, I think that is very powerful to share comics with children, because now there's so many amazing comics that are written for young readers that I just think that segue is just so important, to let kids know that comics are available and how fun and imaginative they are, and just really how many different places you can go within comics. So yeah, definitely a cool thing to share with kids.
Yeah, and that's one of the only reasons why I'm really upset that Shay wasn't able to make it today, because I know that Shay is trying to read some more comics, and I just knew that when I finished Twig, I was like, this is something that I know she is going to love too. So I really wanted to hear what her thoughts were. So I have a feeling we will all hear her thoughts about Twig in some shape or form somewhere else. Maybe we can convince her to talk about it on her channel, on a regular YouTube channel, just because she loves it so much. But I think that's going to wrap it up, everybody. This is definitely a must-be-read. I'm looking forward to diving into some more must-be-reads over the next couple of months. Eventually we will all get back together as a team, and we will definitely talk about some really cool things. But in the meantime, if you have read Twig, we would love to talk to you. So don't forget to drop a comment in the comments section. And if you haven't read Twig, I really hope that the three of us were able to convince you, because one of the other things that we're trying to say about comics is it's not all superheroes, everybody. Superheroes in my world are great, but they don't always have to be the end-all, be-all of comic books. And of course, there's going to be more content coming, so don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are up to date with all of our latest content. Cammie, final thoughts?
I was just gonna say real quick, because I just noticed behind me the whole time we're talking about Twig and Fraggle Rock, I just got the McDonald's Fraggle Rock toy back after all these years. And they're sitting behind me.
I remember those. Oh my goodness. I remember that. And I believe
I'm so
Go
excited. I found
Was it-
them all.
didn't Gobo come with a carrot? I remember that. I remember that. And let me just say, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what
Oh,
Wembley and Moki
You
were
said,
in.
I'm sorry, who did you say?
I said Moki was in a turnip.
Oh,
Is she in
we've
an
got an
eggplant?
eggplant. It's an eggplant, and then this is a cucumber. I never had this one as a kid though, so this one was super cool. I was super excited to have all four though. So
Yeah,
I just thought that was funny that they were sitting behind me the whole time.
Well, on that note, if you haven't watched Fraggle Rock, we highly recommend you check that out too, because that is a really great show. Anyway, everybody, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.